Think about the vast, rolling waves of the ocean, endless, mysterious, and hiding secrets that have haunted human imagination for thousands of years. Long before modern ships mapped every corner of the globe, ancient civilizations whispered stories of sea peoples, sailors, warriors, and explorers whose lives were tangled with the tides, whose legends still ripple through time. These weren't just ordinary cultures, they were societies shaped by the endless blue, their myths as deep and unpredictable as the waters they sailed. And today, their stories linger like ghostly echoes waiting to be uncovered. Picture this: entire civilizations rising and vanishing beneath the waves, leaving behind only fragments of their existence, carved stones, cryptic inscriptions, tales of cities swallowed by the sea. From the Phoenicians, who mastered the Mediterranean, to the Polynesians, who navigated the Pacific by the stars, these ancient mariners didn't just conquer the ocean, they wove it into their very identity. Their legends speak of gods rising from the foam, of monstrous creatures lurking in the abyss, of lost lands like Atlantis and Mu, cities said to have slipped beneath the waves in a single cataclysmic night. But how much of these tales is pure myth, and how much might be rooted in forgotten truths? That's the journey we're setting sail on today. Over the next 30 myths and legends, we'll dive into the most captivating stories of these ancient sea peoples, tales of adventure, tragedy, and wonder that have shaped cultures across continents. You'll hear of sailors who claim to have met mermaids, of storms summoned by vengeful sea gods, and of islands that appeared on maps for centuries before vanishing without a trace. These aren't just stories, they're glimpses into how humanity has always tried to make sense of the vast, untamed ocean. So, if you're ready to uncover the secrets of the deep, to walk the line between history and legend, then let's cast off, because the tide is turning and the mysteries of the ancient sea are waiting. Among all the lost civilizations whispered about in ancient tales, none captures our imagination quite like Atlantis. The first written account comes from the Greek philosopher Plato around 350 years before the Common Era, painting a picture of a mighty island empire that ruled the seas before vanishing in a single day and night of catastrophe. He described towering temples plated in gold, advanced engineering beyond their time, and a powerful navy that conquered lands as far as Egypt until the gods, angered by their hubris, sent earthquakes and floods to drag Atlantis beneath the waves forever. But here's the twist: Plato insisted this wasn't just a story. He claimed it was a real event passed down through generations. So why has this legend endured for over 2,000 years? Part of the mystery lies in the haunting possibility that Atlantis wasn't pure fiction. Some scholars believe Plato's tale might have been inspired by real disasters, like the volcanic eruption that obliterated the Minoan civilization on the island of Thera around 1,600 years before the Common Era. The Minoans were master sailors, their frescoes brimming with dolphins and seascapes, their ports bustling with trade. Then, almost overnight, their cities were buried under ash or swallowed by tsunamis. Could their fate have morphed into the Atlantis myth over centuries? Others point to the so-called sea peoples, mysterious marauders who ravaged the Mediterranean around 1,200 years before the Common Era, toppling empires but leaving no records of their own. Their origins remain unknown. Were they refugees from a sunken homeland, as some theorists suggest? Theories about Atlantis's location range from the obvious to the fantastical. Some search the Mediterranean near Santorini, where the ruins of Thera lie underwater. Others argue for the Azores in the Atlantic, where underwater geological formations hint at lost lands. More speculative ideas place Atlantis near Antarctica or even link it to extraterrestrial visitors. But perhaps the reason the legend persists isn't about geography at all. Atlantis represents something deeper: the fragile relationship between humanity and the sea. Every culture near water has flood myths, tales of cities or worlds drowned by divine wrath. These stories might be ancient warnings. Civilizations rise, grow arrogant, and nature reminds them of their place. Whether Atlantis was real or not, its legacy endures because it speaks to our deepest fears of being consumed by the very waters that give us life. The ocean holds more than just lost cities. It's home to creatures that still send shivers down our spines. Across the cold, dark waters of the North Atlantic, Norse sailors whispered of a monster so vast it could pull entire ships into the abyss with its writhing arms. They called it the Kraken, a beast born from their deepest fears of the unknown deep. These weren't just campfire stories. To medieval fishermen, the Kraken was as real as the storms that battered their longships. Descriptions varied. Some said it resembled a monstrous crab, others a serpent with eyes like dinner plates, but the terror was universal. What's fascinating is how closely these ancient accounts match something very real: the giant squid, a creature that remained myth until the 19th century when carcasses began washing ashore. The Kraken's legend likely sprouted from chance encounters with these elusive giants. Imagine a Viking crew spotting a shadow moving beneath their ship, something longer than their vessel, with arms thicker than a man's torso. No wonder they spun tales of a creature that could crush masts like twigs. Even naturalists like Carl Linnaeus once classified the Kraken as a real species, noting sailors' claims that its rising could create whirlpools. But the myth evolved beyond mere misidentification. In Norse lore, the Kraken became almost a force of nature, a manifestation of the sea's indifference to human ambition. Poets wrote of its habit of luring fish to the surface with a strange bile only to swallow them and any nearby ships in one gulp. This wasn't just Scandinavian folklore. The Kraken seeped into global culture, inspiring everything from Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea to Hollywood blockbusters. Pirates of the Caribbean turned it into a ship-smashing villain, while other stories painted it as almost supernatural, a guardian of drowned treasures. But perhaps the most intriguing twist is how science caught up with myth. In 2004, Japanese researchers captured the first live images of a giant squid in its deep-sea habitat, revealing an animal every bit as eerie as the legends. 8 slithering arms, eyes the size of basketballs, and a beak that could snap a shark in half. Nature, it seems, had crafted its own Kraken. Yet the legend endures because it taps into something primal. The ocean is Earth's last great wilderness, and the Kraken embodies its mysteries. Every time we dredge up a new deep-sea creature, like the colossal squid, even larger than its giant cousin, we're reminded how much we still don't know. Maybe that's why the Kraken still haunts our stories. It's not just a monster, it's a symbol of all the unseen horrors and wonders lurking beneath the waves, waiting for the next sailor or scientist to stumble upon them. If the Kraken embodied the sea's brute force, the sirens of Greek myth wielded a far subtler and deadlier weapon: sound. These weren't just mermaids lounging on rocks. Homer described them as cunning enchantresses whose voices could bend the will of even the most disciplined sailors. In the Odyssey, Odysseus orders his crew to plug their ears with wax and lashes himself to the mast just to resist their call, knowing full well that those who succumbed would steer their ships onto jagged cliffs. But why did ancient Greeks fear these creatures so deeply, and could there be a grain of truth hidden in their haunting melody? The sirens' power lies in their symbolism. They represented the ocean's seductive danger, the way calm waters could hide deadly currents, or how a distant shore might promise refuge but conceal razor-sharp reefs. Some historians theorize the myth might have sprung from real acoustic phenomena. In certain Mediterranean coves, wind whistling through narrow rock formations can create eerie, almost musical tones. Combine that with the cries of seabirds like shearwaters whose wailing calls sound unnervingly human, and you have a recipe for supernatural suspicion. Even the behavior of seals, their mournful eyes and human-like voices, might have fueled tales of half-woman, half-fish creatures luring men to watery graves. Yet the sirens were more than just misidentified wildlife. They embodied a psychological threat, the peril of desire itself. Greek culture prized self-control, and the sirens were the ultimate test. Their song wasn't just beautiful, it promised secret knowledge. Later versions of the myth claim they sang of everything from war strategies to the mysteries of the underworld, tempting sailors with the very things they craved most. This twist reveals a deeper fear, that curiosity and ambition could be as deadly as any storm. Modern interpretations take the metaphor further. Some see the sirens as early warnings against distraction, mythic ancestors to today's addictive technologies. Others link them to natural gas seeps that once disoriented sailors with hallucinogenic fumes. Whatever their origin, their legacy is undeniable. From Starbucks' twin-tailed logo to the eerie siren alarms of emergency vehicles, these creatures still echo through culture, a timeless reminder that the most dangerous traps are the ones we willingly walk into. The sea, like desire, offers endless allure, but not every melody leads to safe harbor. Some ships don't just sink, they refuse to die. Lurking in the storm-racked waters off the Cape of Good Hope, the Flying Dutchman is perhaps the most infamous ghost ship of all time, a vessel cursed to sail the waves forever without ever reaching port. The legend first took root in the late 17th century, when Dutch East India Company traders brought back whispers of a captain so reckless, he challenged the heavens themselves. According to the tale, Captain Hendrik van der Decken was racing home with a hull full of spices when a monstrous storm rose near the Cape. His crew begged him to turn back, but Van der Decken, drunk on pride or maybe actual rum, shouted defiance at the sky, vowing to round the Cape even if it took him until Judgment Day. The heavens, unamused, took him at his word. Lightning struck the mast and the ship was condemned to an eternity adrift, its crew neither living nor dead, forever glimpsed through curtains of fog. But why did this particular story grip sailors' imagination so fiercely? Part of it lies in the Cape's grim reputation. Before the Suez Canal, every European ship bound for Asia had to pass this way, where the Atlantic and Indian Oceans collide in a chaos of currents and gale-force winds. The Dutch called it the Cape of Storms. For good reason, hundreds of wrecks litter the seabed here. Sailors swore the Dutchman appeared as a harbinger of doom, her tattered sails glowing with an eerie light. Spotting her meant disaster. Maybe your ship would founder, or worse, you'd be drawn into her crew's endless purgatory. Even Prince George of Wales, later King George V, claimed to have seen her during his naval service in 1881, logging an encounter with a phantom ship bathed in red haze. The Dutchman's myth evolved with each telling. Some versions paint Van der Decken as a villain hoarding stolen treasures. Others frame him as a tragic figure doomed by a single moment of arrogance. By the 19th century, the story had seeped into global culture, inspiring Wagner's opera and later Hollywood films that turned the ship into a spectral pirate menace. But beneath the theatrics lies a deeper truth. The legend mirrored very real fears. In an age when ships vanished without a trace, the Dutchman became a way to explain the inexplicable. Was it a mirage caused by atmospheric refraction, a hallucination from scurvy or rotten food, or perhaps something stranger, like the optical illusion known as Fata Morgana, where distant ships appear to hover above the horizon, distorted by layers of hot and cold air? What's haunting is how the Dutchman refuses to fade. Even in modern times, reports trickle in. Fishermen off Table Bay swear they've seen a shadowy brigantine vanish into thin air. Naval radar occasionally picks up phantom blips where no ship exists. Science can debunk some sightings, but not the chill they inspire, because the Dutchman isn't just a ghost story, she's a reminder. The ocean doesn't care about human schedules or pride. One arrogant decision, one misread cloud, and the sea claims you forever. Whether Van der Decken was real or not, his ship sails on, a warning etched in salt and storm. Nature always has the last word. Off the coasts of the Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia, There exists a people who blur the line between land and sea, the Bajau, often called the sea gypsies for their centuries-old tradition of living almost entirely on the water. Their stilt villages rise above coral reefs, their wooden boats serve as both homes and transport, and their children learn to swim before they can walk. But what makes the Bajau truly extraordinary aren't just their nomadic ways, it's the legends surrounding their almost supernatural connection to the ocean. Ancient traders spoke of Bajau divers who could hold their breath for impossibly long stretches, plunging dozens of meters without equipment to harvest pearls, sea cucumbers, and fish with nothing but handmade wooden goggles. To outsiders, these abilities seemed otherworldly. Some whispered they were descended from spirits of the waves or that they'd made pacts with sea demons for their gifts. Science, however, has uncovered an even more fascinating truth. Studies revealed that many Bajau have evolved physical traits rare in other populations, larger spleens, which act like natural oxygen tanks, allowing them to stay submerged for minutes longer than average divers. Their eyesight adapts to underwater clarity, and their bodies conserve oxygen with eerie efficiency. These aren't mythical powers, they're the result of generations literally shaped by the sea. Yet the legends persist, woven into the Bajau's own oral traditions. Elders tell of ancestors who could commune with dolphins or who rode currents like pathways guided by the whispers of ocean spirits. One tale describes a legendary diver who swam so deep he reached a hidden kingdom beneath the waves, returning with a bracelet of black coral no human hands could have crafted. But the Bajau's way of life is as fragile as the reefs they depend on. Modern fishing fleets, climate change, and government pressures have forced many to abandon their boats for cramped settlements on land. With this shift, something irreplaceable is vanishing, not just a culture, but a living testament to humanity's ability to adapt to the harshest environments. The Bajau's superhuman traits fade in children raised ashore, a stark reminder that their gifts were earned through intimate, daily communion with the sea. Today, their legends serve as both celebration and warning, a tribute to resilience and a glimpse of what we lose when ancient bonds with nature are severed. Perhaps that's why the myths endure. The Bajau remind us that the ocean isn't just a resource to exploit, but a world we can belong to. Their stories of divers who outswim sharks, of storms calmed by whispered prayers, aren't just folklore. They're the echoes of a vanishing harmony between people and the sea, a harmony as deep and mysterious as the waters themselves. Navigating the Strait of Messina, the narrow passage between Italy and Sicily, was a nightmare for ancient sailors, not just because of its treacherous currents, but because of the twin horrors said to guard it. On one side lurked Charybdis, a gaping whirlpool that swallowed entire ships 3 times a day. On the opposite cliff crouched Scylla, a 6-headed monster who plucked sailors from the deck like berries from a bush. These weren't just random threats, they embodied an impossible choice. Odysseus himself, in Homer's Odyssey, faced this very dilemma: steer closer to Charybdis and risk annihilation, or hug Scylla's side and sacrifice 6 men to her ravenous maws. His heartbreaking decision, to sacrifice a few to save the rest, reveals how deeply these myths mirrored real maritime terror. But what made these legends so enduring? Start with Charybdis. Ancient Greek texts describe her as a living force, a daughter of Poseidon cursed into a ravenous vortex. Yet modern oceanography suggests a startling truth: the strait's whirlpools are real. When tidal currents collide with underwater trenches near Messina, swirling funnels form, some large enough to capsize small vessels, the 3 times a day detail in the myth. That matches the region's tidal patterns almost exactly. Sailors likely witnessed these natural phenomena and spun them into something monstrous, a way to personify the sea's unpredictable wrath. Then there's Scylla. Unlike Charybdis' brute force, she represented a more intimate horror. Descriptions paint her as part woman, part serpent, with wolf-like heads sprouting from her waist, a grotesque fusion that may have roots in nature too. The strait's rocky outcrops are teeming with moray eels, their snake-like bodies darting from crevices to snatch prey. Combine that with the way jagged rocks could bite into a ship's hull, and suddenly Scylla's form makes grisly sense. Even her positioning perched high on a cliff reflects the very real danger of coastal reefs where sailors had to choose between deep water and deadly shallows. The genius of these myths lies in their duality. They weren't just warnings, they were lessons in navigation and leadership. The strait's actual geography forces a captain's hand, a lesson Odysseus learns the hard way. His crew, traumatized by Scylla's attack, later panics and steers into Charybdis' maw, losing everything. It's a parable about the perils of hesitation and the cruel math of survival. Today, these monsters live on in language. Between Scylla and Charybdis endures as shorthand for choosing between two evils. But beneath the metaphor, the strait's currents still churn, a reminder that some fears, like the sea itself, never truly fade. Whether as myth or maritime hazard, these twin terrors continue to teach us. The ocean doesn't offer safe passages, only choices, and sometimes the only way forward is through the teeth of the beast. Deep in the rainforests and along the rugged coasts of Hawaii, whispers persist of the many-hued, tiny, mysterious builders who worked only under the cover of night. According to legend, these elusive figures stood no taller than a child, yet possessed incredible strength and skill, constructing fish ponds, roads, and even temples in a single evening. If spotted by humans, they'd vanish instantly, leaving behind only the evidence of their labor. The most famous of these feats, the many-hued fish pond on Kauai, a massive stone enclosure stretching hundreds of meters, its walls perfectly fitted without mortar. Locals swear it was built in one night by a chain of many-hued passing stones hand to hand from miles away. But who or what were these shadowy craftsmen, and why do their stories endure? One theory ties the many-hued to Hawaii's earliest settlers. Long before the Polynesians we recognize today arrived, oral traditions suggest another group may have inhabited the islands smaller in stature, possibly from the Marquesas or other distant shores. Over time, as new waves of settlers arrived, these original inhabitants could have retreated into remote valleys or dense forests, emerging only secretly to trade or work. Their engineering prowess, refined over generations, might have seemed supernatural to newcomers, sparking tales of magical beings. Supporting this, archaeologists note that some many-hued attributed structures, like the Elikoko fish pond, date back over 1,000 years, aligning with periods of early migration. Yet the many-hued's legend transcends mere history. In Hawaiian lore, they're tricksters as much as builders. Some say they'd punish laziness, stealing the fish from nets of those who napped instead of working, or reward kindness, leaving gifts of perfectly carved tools for those who left offerings of food. Their duality reflects the island's own nature, capable of both bounty and fury, demanding respect from those who dwelled there. Even the name Menehune may hold clues. Some linguists link it to the Tahitian word manahune, meaning commoner or lowly person, hinting at a possible underclass displaced by later arrivals. Modern sightings still trickle in, though skeptics dismiss them as misidentified wildlife or campfire tales. But the Menehune's true legacy isn't in proving their existence, it's in what they represent. They embody the ingenuity of Hawaii's ancestors, their intimate knowledge of the land and sea, and the power of communal effort. When you stand by the Menehune fish pond at sunset, watching the water glow gold between ancient stones, it's easy to imagine tiny hands working in harmony, a reminder that even the grandest feats begin with small, unseen hands. The Menehune may be myth, but their lessons of resilience, craftsmanship, and respect for the natural world are as real as the tides. Beneath the turquoise waves of the Caribbean, where sunlight fades into the abyss, fishermen whisper of a predator far older than their boats, the Lusca. Half octopus, half shark, and wholly terrifying, this creature is said to lurk in the blue holes near the Bahamas, its tentacles long enough to drag entire fishing vessels into the depths. Locals describe encounters with something massive, a shadow that rises from underwater caves, wrapping slick limbs around hulls before disappearing in a churn of bubbles. But what makes the Lusca more than just another sea monster tale is how eerily it mirrors the very real mysteries of the ocean's uncharted trenches. The legend likely sprouted from genuine fears. The Caribbean's blue holes, collapsed caves flooded by rising seas, plunge hundreds of meters down, their walls pocked with tunnels too narrow for submarines to explore. Divers tell of strange currents pulling them sideways, of ink-black water hiding creatures they can't identify. In the 1970s, fishermen off Andros Island reported nets torn apart by something with strength far beyond a shark's, their lines snapping as if something below was testing its prey. Even scientists admit these depths hold unknowns. The giant squid was once myth too, until cameras proved otherwise. Could the Lusca be a misidentified colossal octopus or something even more bizarre? What's fascinating is how the Lusca's behavior echoes ancient seafaring nightmares. Taino and Arawak oral traditions speak of a devil of the deep that guarded underwater passages to the spirit world. Later, pirate logs from the golden age of sail mention ships vanishing near the tongue of the ocean, a trench so deep it swallows sonar pulses. Modern theories suggest the Lusca might be a surviving prehistoric cephalopod, like the 20-meter-long Camerosaurs that once ruled these waters. Others propose it's a colossal version of the six-gill shark, a deep-sea relic that occasionally surfaces near blue holes, its body scarred by battles with unseen foes. Yet the Lusca's true power lies in its symbolism. For island communities, it's not just a monster, it's a warning. The blue holes are sacred in Bahamian culture, gateways between worlds where offerings are still made to appease the spirits below. Fishermen avoid certain areas at night, not out of superstition but respect for the ocean's secrets. In an age where satellites map every reef, the Lusca reminds us that some places resist exploration, that the sea keeps its oldest inhabitants hidden. Perhaps that's why the legend endures. Every dredged-up squid beak, every sonar glitch in the abyss fuels the question, what else is down there waiting in the dark? Science may one day find an answer, but for now, the Lusca remains both mystery and metaphor, a shadow in the deep, proof that even in our modern world, the ocean writes its own myths. And sometimes, just sometimes, it lets us glimpse the teeth behind the story. Deep in the flooded forests of the Amazon, where rivers twist like veins beneath the emerald canopy, the Yakuruna move unseen. These shape-shifting water spirits are said to inhabit crystal palaces beneath the blackwater lagoons, their cities glowing with an eerie light no mortal fire could produce. To the Shipibo, the Kukama, and other indigenous peoples, the Yakuruna aren't just myths, they're a fundamental part of the river's soul, as real as the piranha's teeth or the anaconda's coils. But what makes these beings so chillingly compelling isn't just their supernatural prowess, it's their unsettling duality. They can appear as handsome strangers luring villagers into the depths, or as grotesque, frog-like creatures with backward-facing feet, dragging the unwary into their liquid realm. The Yakuruna's legend is deeply tied to the Amazon's ecology. During the rainy season, when the river swells and swallows entire swaths of jungle, the boundary between land and water blurs, and so, locals say, does the veil between worlds. Fishermen tell of hearing music rising from the waves at dusk, melodies played on flutes made of human bone. Some claim to have glimpsed underwater villages where time flows backward, where the Yakuruna walk upside down along submerged tree roots. These stories might sound fantastical, but they mirror very real dangers. The Amazon's waters hide whirlpools that can suck a canoe under in seconds, and toxic plants that induce hallucinations, perfect fuel for tales of enchantment and abduction. What's most fascinating is how the Yakuruna defy simple categorization. They're not mere monsters, they're teachers, tricksters, and sometimes even healers. Shamans speak of learning medicinal secrets from them in exchange for offerings of tobacco or coca. Yet cross them and the consequences are dire. One recurring tale warns of a logger who mocked the Yakuruna's warnings only to vanish, his boots found floating near a river bend filled with black water and tiny frog eggs. Such stories serve as ecological parables, reinforcing respect for the river's power. Modern encounters keep the legend alive. Ecotourists on night canoe trips report seeing lights moving beneath the water's surface, while biologists studying rare fish species swear their equipment is sometimes tugged by unseen hands. Scientists dismiss these as bioluminescent organisms or curious river dolphins, but for the Amazon's people, the Yakuruna remain. They're a reminder that this isn't just a habitat, it's a living, breathing entity with its own rules and rulers. To navigate these waters, you don't just need a map, you need to understand the stories, because in the Amazon, the line between myth and survival is as thin as a morning mist over the river. Along the windswept coasts of Scotland and the Orkney Islands, where the sea pounds the cliffs like a restless heart, two very different legends whisper through the salt spray: the selkies and the finfolk. One is a story of longing and transformation, the other, a chilling tale of abduction and control. Both reveal how these isolated communities understood the ocean's dual nature, its ability to give and to take, to cradle and to claim. The selkies are perhaps the gentlest of sea myths. These shape-shifters live as seals in the water but shed their skins to walk on land as beautiful men and women. Countless stories tell of fishermen hiding a selkie's discarded pelt, trapping them in human form to become wives or husbands. But there's always a catch. If the selkie ever finds their skin again, they'll return to the sea without a second glance, leaving their human family behind. At first glance, it's a romantic tragedy, but dig deeper and you'll find something radical. Many scholars read selkie tales as covert feminist narratives. The selkie's inevitable return to the ocean isn't cruelty, it's autonomy. In societies where women had little agency, these stories allowed them to imagine escape, to dream of a life beyond the confines of village expectations. The sea, for the selkie, isn't just home, it's freedom. Then there are the finfolk, the polar opposite of the selkies. These sinister beings, half human and half fish, prowl the waves in sleek black boats, snatching sailors and shore dwellers alike to enslave in their underwater city of Finfolkahim. Unlike the selkies, who are bound by love, the finfolk are driven by possession. They're said to target the strongest, most beautiful humans, dragging them beneath the waves to never be seen again. What's striking is how these myths mirror real historical fears. The Orkney Islands were frequent targets of Viking raids, and the finfolk's sudden, violent abductions echo that trauma. But there's another layer. The finfolk represent the ocean's indiscriminate hunger. A storm doesn't care if you're young or old, kind or cruel, it takes just as the finfolk do. Yet these legends aren't just about fear or escape, they're about belonging. The selkies and finfolk exist in the liminal space between land and sea, human and other. They force us to ask who truly owns the shore. Is it the people who farm and fish there, or the ancient forces that shaped it? Even today, these stories resonate. Modern retellings recast selkies as metaphors for queer identity or diaspora longing, the ache of living in a skin that doesn't quite fit. The finfolk, meanwhile, find new life in environmental warnings. What happens when we, like them, take from the sea without giving back? So the next time you stand by the North Sea, watching the grey waves roll in, listen closely. That splash might be a selkie slipping back into her true form, or a finfolk's oar dipping below the surface. Either way, the message is clear: the ocean keeps its secrets, and some boundaries were never meant to be crossed. In the murky billabongs and winding rivers of Australia, something stirs beneath the lily pads, a creature so deeply woven into Aboriginal lore that its name alone sends chills down the spine: the bunyip. To the Wemba people, it was a scaly beast with the tail of a whale and the tusks of a walrus. The gun I described it as a feathered serpent with a voice like thunder, while others painted it as a shaggy-haired monster with glowing eyes. But one thing united every telling: the bunyip wasn't just a predator, it was a warning. For thousands of years, Aboriginal communities used the bunyip myth to explain the unexplained. Disappearances near waterholes, the bunyip's hunger, strange echoes in the night, its mournful wail. Some scholars believe these stories may have roots in real encounters with now extinct megafauna. Fossil records show that giant marsupials like diprotodon rhinoceros-sized herbivores once roamed Australia. Could their bones eroding from riverbanks have inspired tales of lurking swamp monsters? Or perhaps the bunyip was born from encounters with leopard seals, which occasionally wander inland, their serpentine bodies and haunting cries unlike any local animal. When European settlers arrived, they didn't dismiss the bunyip, they weaponized it. Colonial newspapers sensationalized sightings, printing lurid accounts of settlers attacked by water demons to justify draining wetlands and displacing indigenous peoples. In one 1840s article, a hunter claimed to have shot a bunyip, describing it as a hybrid of a bird, a crocodile, and a hippopotamus, the specimen later revealed to be a decomposing calf. Yet the exaggeration served a purpose, framing the land as wild and dangerous, in need of taming, but the bunyip refused to be colonized. In modern times, it's been reclaimed as a symbol of resilience. Children's books reimagine it as a guardian of waterways, while Aboriginal artists depict it as a teacher, reminding us to respect the fragile balance of wetlands. Recent ecological studies even lend eerie credence to the legends. Some billabongs do produce mysterious booming sounds caused by gases escaping rotting vegetation. To scientists, it's a natural phenomenon. To those who have heard it, it's the bunyip's song, a voice from the deep, still whispering its ancient truth. Some places and some stories refuse to be silenced. In the storm-lashed waters off Japan's coast, sailors have long feared an encounter far stranger than any ordinary squall. The Umabazu, a towering black figure that rises from the waves like a drowned monk. Descriptions vary. Some say it has glowing white eyes and a smooth, featureless head. Others claim its body is woven from seaweed and shadow. But one detail remains consistent. When the Umabazu surfaces, it demands a barrel from the ship's crew. Refuse, and it unleashes a wave powerful enough to snap the vessel in half. Hand one over, and it might allow you to pass unharmed. But why would a creature of the deep crave a simple wooden barrel? The answer lies in Japan's tangled history with the sea, where Buddhist teachings and natural disasters collide. The Umabazu's origins are steeped in spiritual symbolism. Its name literally translates to sea priest, and its shaven head mirrors that of Buddhist monks, suggesting a being caught between enlightenment and wrath. Some scholars believe the legend began as a way to explain rogue waves, sudden, massive swells that appear without warning, swallowing ships whole. Japan's coastline is particularly vulnerable to these phenomena, especially where deep trenches meet shallow shelves, creating underwater avalanches that can trigger monstrous waves. But the Umabazu isn't just science dressed in myth. Its barrel ritual hints at something darker, the idea of appeasement. In Buddhist tradition, offerings are made to restless spirits to pacify their anger. The Umabazu, then, becomes a kind of oceanic judge, testing the humility of those who dare to cross its domain. Stories of the Umabazu often blur the line between folklore and survival manual. One Edo period tale recounts a quick-thinking sailor who handed the creature a bottomless barrel. As the Umabazu tried to scoop seawater into it, the doomed spirit collapsed into foam, a lesson in outwitting forces beyond human control. Another account tells of a ship that survived an encounter by painting eyes on its hull, a practice still seen today on some Japanese fishing boats. These eyes are meant to confuse the Umabazu, making the vessel appear alive and sentient, unworthy of its wrath. It's a fascinating glimpse into how folklore shaped real-world maritime practices, turning superstition into strategy. Yet the Yumabazu's most haunting connection might be to tsunamis. Ancient scrolls depict the creature emerging before catastrophic waves, its arrival marking the boundary between calm and calamity. In the wake of the 2011 Tohoku disaster, some survivors recounted eerie premonitions, dreams of a dark figure standing in the shallows or strange tides receding too quickly. While science rightly points to tectonic shifts as the cause, the human mind seeks patterns, symbols. The Yumabazu endures because it gives shape to the sea's unfathomable power, a way to personify the impersonal. Today, the legend persists in subtle ways. Modern sailors still speak of barrel weather, sudden, unnatural storms that appear without warning. And in coastal shrines, offerings are left not just for safe voyages, but to honor the unseen forces beneath the waves. The Yumabazu may be myth, but its message is timeless. The ocean demands respect, and sometimes the only way to survive its fury is to offer it a hollow gift and pray it's enough. From the icy fjords of Scandinavia to the tropical waters of the Caribbean, nearly every coastal culture has its own version of the sea serpent, a creature so universally feared and revered that its image coils through centuries of art, literature, and sailors' logs. The Norse spoke of Jörmungandr, the Midgard serpent, so enormous it could circle the entire world and grasp its own tail. Medieval mapmakers doodled terrifying dragon-like beasts along uncharted edges of parchment, warning, "Here be monsters." Even as recently as the 19th century, naval captains documented encounters with undulating, horse-headed beasts longer than their ships. But what unites these disparate legends, and could there be a sliver of truth hidden beneath the scales? Take Jörmungandr first. In Norse mythology, this serpent wasn't just a monster, it was an apocalyptic force. Thor himself famously tried to lift the creature from the ocean, only to realize its true size, a metaphor for humanity's futile struggle against nature's immensity. Yet what's fascinating is how closely Jörmungandr's descriptions align with real deep-sea dwellers. The giant oarfish, for instance, can stretch over 15 meters, its ribbon-like body undulating vertically through the water like the mythical serpent. When these rarely seen fish surface, often before storms due to pressure, changes, their crimson manes and silvery scales might explain ancient sightings of dragons heralding doom. Half a world away, the Caribbean's sea dragon traditions tell a different story. Indigenous Taino people described huge, serpentine beings that guarded underwater caves, their bodies shimmering with bioluminescent algae. Spanish conquistadors later reported similar creatures, their logs filled with sketches of long-necked beasts resembling plesiosaurs. Modern biologists suggest these could have been misidentified whales. A humpback's twisting breaching, for example, might easily resemble a sinuous monster when glimpsed through spray and superstition. Or consider the basking shark. When its carcass rots, the jaw and gills slough away, leaving a grotesque sea serpent skull that has fueled hoaxes for centuries. But perhaps the most compelling evidence lies in medieval maps. The infamous Carta Marina, drawn in the 1500s, depicts a menagerie of sea beasts. One particularly striking creature off Norway's coast, with a dog-like head and coiled body, bears an uncanny resemblance to a sperm whale's twisted intestines. Whale decomposition is a messy, surreal process. Bloated organs can resemble tentacles, and the stench alone might have convinced sailors they'd stumbled upon something supernatural. Even the Vikings, pragmatic as they were, might have mistaken a pod of whales surfacing in fog for the writhing coils of Jörmungandr. Yet the sea serpent's endurance isn't just about mistaken identity. These legends tap into something primal, the terror of the unknown depths. The ocean remains Earth's last great frontier, and every new discovery, from the 40-meter-long siphonophore to the elusive giant squid, proves how little we truly know. The next time you see a wave break oddly or a shadow dart beneath your boat, remember, the sea serpents of old might be myths, but the ocean's capacity for wonder is anything but. Off the rugged western coast of Ireland, where the Atlantic crashes against cliffs older than memory, fishermen still cast nervous glances toward the waves, not just for storms but for flashes of coppery hair and webbed fingers. These are the Merrows, Ireland's enigmatic merfolk, as much a part of the island's soul as shamrocks or fiddle music. Unlike the delicate mermaids of other tales, Merrows are complex beings, both alluring and unsettling. The males are often described as gruff, seal-like creatures with green teeth and a fondness for seaweed pipes, while the females possess an unearthly beauty, their voices capable of luring ships toward rocks or saving them depending on their mood. What makes Merrows unique isn't just their duality, but their artifacts, a magical red cap called a cohuilín druth, which allows them to traverse between sea and shore. Steal a Merrow's cap and she'll be bound to land, forced into marriage, but let her find it again and she'll vanish into the foam, leaving broken hearts and half-human children in her wake. These stories aren't just whimsy, they're rooted in Ireland's maritime struggles. The Merrow's cap mirrors the very real danger of stolen agency, echoing tales of fishermen lost at sea or women taken by foreign ships. Some scholars even link Merrows to the selkies of Scotland, suggesting shared Celtic origins. But Ireland's merfolk carry a distinct melancholy. In one folktale from Galway, a fisherman hides his Merrow wife's cap for years, only to find her one day staring at the ocean with hollow eyes. When their child returns the cap, the Merrow doesn't hesitate. She dives into the waves, leaving only a single scale on the sand. It's a haunting reminder. The sea claims what it loves, and no human cage can hold it forever. Now cross the Irish Sea to the churning waters of the Minch, the narrow passage between Scotland's Outer Hebrides and the mainland, a place so treacherous even Vikings feared it. Here, the blue men ride the waves like a cavalry of the damned. Tall and muscular with indigo skin and grey beards, they surface during storms to challenge sailors with rhyming riddles. Answer correctly and they'll spare your ship, stumble over a syllable and they'll drag you into the depths. One account describes a captain who outwitted them by completing their verse. Men of blue, though your words are clever, the sea is mine and mine forever. The blue men, impressed, vanished beneath the foam. But what's fascinating is how this legend mirrors real Hebridean culture. The Minch's tides create eerie acoustic effects where wind and water seem to sing, perfect fodder for poetic duels. And the blue men's obsession with verse, it reflects Scotland's deep bardic traditions, where wordcraft was as vital as swordsmanship. The contrast between these two legends is striking. The Merrows represent stolen freedom and the cost of binding the wild. The blue men embody the sea's intellect, its demand for respect through wit rather than force. Yet both serve as cultural time capsules. The Merrows' red caps might symbolize the dangers of colonialism, something precious taken, a people displaced. The blue men's riddles could preserve ancient oral traditions, their verses acting as nautical survival tests. Today, traces linger. In Donegal, some still tie red cloth to fishing nets for luck, a nod to the cohuilín druth. And in the Minch, sailors half joke about keeping a book of poetry in the wheelhouse just in case. Perhaps that's the true magic of these myths. They're not just warnings or whimsy, they're conversations with the sea itself, written in rhyme and whispered in salt spray. The ocean doesn't just drown, it speaks, and sometimes, if you listen closely, it tells you how to survive. Stories from Scotland's mist-shrouded Hebrides speak of a predator, so vast it could mistake a fishing boat for a minnow, the siren croin, a beast that could stretch the length of 7 whales or coil itself into the form of a silver-scaled salmon. Gaelic lore warns that this shapeshifter lurks in the deep trenches off Skye and Mull, surfacing only to unleash catastrophe. Some accounts describe it as an eel-like monstrosity with eyes like eclipsed suns. Others claim it mimics the call of a storm petrel to lure sailors into its maw. But the siren croin isn't just a bogeyman, it's a poetic embodiment of the Hebrides' most lethal natural forces. a living metaphor for tsunamis, whirlpools, and the capricious fury of the North Atlantic. Consider the timing of its legends. The earliest recorded tales coincide with the Great Storm of 1724, a tempest so violent it reshaped coastlines and drowned entire villages. Survivors spoke of a shadow beneath the waves that churned the sea into a frenzy, mirroring the siren crone's reputed ability to summon gales with a flick of its tail. Even the creature's name holds clues. Siren crone loosely translates to the crowned one, possibly referencing the crest-like wave that precedes a tsunami. Modern geologists note that the Hebrides sit atop fault lines capable of triggering submarine landslides, events that could generate massive waves in minutes. To ancient islanders, such phenomena might have seemed less like geology and more like the thrashing of an unseen leviathan. The siren crone's shapeshifting adds another layer of brilliance to the myth. In one folktale, it transforms into a glistening fish to tempt a hungry fisherman, only to revert to its true form mid-hook, dragging both man and boat into the abyss. This detail might reflect real maritime hazards. The Hebrides waters are notorious for hollow waves, deceptive swells that appear manageable until they suddenly collapse. The monster's fluid nature also mirrors the region's ecological duality, where calm locks can turn turbulent in moments, and schools of herring vanish overnight as if swallowed whole. What's most haunting is how the legend persists. As recently as 1958, a lifeboat crew from Lewis reported an encounter near the Flannan Isles, where their sonar detected a massive, fast-moving object that vanished into a trench. Rational explanations abound, perhaps a basking shark or a malfunctioning instrument, but local fishermen nodded knowingly. To them, the siren crone isn't just folklore, it's a shorthand for the sea's unfathomable power. Even today, when storms rattle the windows of coastal cottages, elders murmur the old warning, "Tha am ba fion adol fadha," the pale crest is diving. A reminder that some forces defy understanding, and the ocean's oldest stories are written in salt and shadow. In the windswept Orkney Islands north of Scotland, where the sea and sky blur into endless grey, there's a name still spoken in hushed tones: Nuckelavee. This nightmare hybrid of man and horse isn't just a monster, it's a walking plague. Picture a grotesque fusion of muscle and sinew, its skinless body glistening like raw meat, veins pulsing black with venom. Where a horse's head should be, a massive human torso erupts from its back, arms dragging knuckles through the surf as it wades ashore. Its breath reeks of rotting seaweed, and its single bloodshot eye burns with malice. But what makes the Nuckelavee truly terrifying isn't its appearance, it's what follows in its wake. Orcadian folklore ties the creature to every natural disaster that scars the islands. When crops withered mysteriously overnight, when fishing boats capsized in freak waves, when fever swept through villages, the Nuckelavee was blamed. Its origins are as murky as the peat bogs it's said to emerge from. Some claim it's a remnant of Norse mythology, a cousin to Jörmungandr cast ashore. Others whisper it's the vengeful spirit of a drowned Viking warlord, cursed to spread suffering as he once did. But the most chilling theory comes from local fishermen, who insist the Nuckelavee is a living embodiment of the ocean's wrath, a physical manifestation of the sea's hunger for repayment. The creature's connection to plagues holds eerie parallels to real historical events. In the 1700s, Orkney endured repeated outbreaks of ergotism, a horrific condition caused by fungus-infected grain, which led to convulsions and gangrenous limbs. Victims described hallucinations of a skinless rider galloping through fields before falling ill. Coincidence, perhaps, but consider this: the Nuckelavee is uniquely vulnerable to fresh water, fleeing from even a single drop. During outbreaks, islanders would hang buckets of blessed well water above doorways, a practice that aligned strangely well with quarantining contaminated crops away from clean water sources. The line between superstition and survival strategy blurs. Storms are its other calling card. Sailors tell of spotting the Nuckelavee racing across waves on storm fronts, its hooves kicking up spray that stings like acid. 19th century ship logs mention a recurring phenomenon near Sunday, where whirlpools would form without warning. Locals called it the Nuckelavee stirrup. Modern meteorologists might attribute these to tidal surges colliding with underwater trenches, but the legend persists because it encodes vital knowledge. The creature's appearance coincides with the autumn equinox, when Orkney's tides are most violent. By personifying the danger, the myth ensured generations remembered when the sea was hungriest. What's fascinating is how the Nuckelavee differs from other Scottish bogeymen. Unlike the kelpie, which lures victims into water, or the selkie, which mourns lost love, the Nuckelavee exists purely to punish. It doesn't bargain, it doesn't reason. It's a force of retribution, a reminder that nature keeps ledgers and the debt comes due in blood and brine. Today, you'll still find older fishermen refusing to speak its name aloud during gales, lest they pull its attention. And on nights when the aurora bleeds green over Scapa Flow, some swear they hear the distant scream of a horse where no horse should be. The Nuckelavee may be myth, but the fear it represents, that some storms aren't just weather, but something watching that's as real as the tide. Off the jagged coast of Brittany, where waves gnaw at the cliffs like hungry wolves, fishermen whisper of the Morgans, the drowned women of the sea. Unlike their siren cousins of Greek myth, these Breton spirits aren't merely seductive, they're spectral mourners, their songs infused with the salt of grief and vengeance. Cloaked in seaweed and moonlight, they're said to rise from shipwrecks, their eyes hollow with centuries of loss, their voices weaving through the fog like a funeral dirge. But what makes the Morgans so unnerving isn't just their haunting presence, it's how they embody Brittany's turbulent relationship with the ocean, a dance of reverence and terror passed down through generations. The Morgans' legends are steeped in duality. Some tales paint them as tragic figures, women betrayed by lovers or lost in storms, condemned to wander the tides. Others cast them as wrathful avengers, dragging unfaithful sailors into the depths with hands like ice. One recurring story tells of a fisherman who mocked a Morgan's lament, only to wake the next morning with his boat filled not with fish but with polished human skulls. Such tales served as stark reminders. The sea wasn't just a livelihood, it was a living force with a long memory. Their parallels to sirens are striking but twisted. Where sirens lured with promises of knowledge or desire, the Morgan's call is one of shared sorrow. Breton ballads describe their songs as echoes of drowned villages, voices blending with the crash of waves in a chorus of collective mourning. This distinction reveals a cultural truth. Brittany's coast is littered with the bones of ships and the ruins of settlements claimed by erosion. The Morgans, then, aren't just monsters, they're the ocean's archivists singing the histories the land has forgotten. Local rituals still echo these fears. In some villages, fishermen's wives once tied black ribbons to dock posts to bind the Morgan's rage, a practice eerily aligned with storm seasons. Even today, older sailors avoid whistling on boats, a superstition said to mimic the Morgan's cries and summon their attention. And when the mist rolls in thick over the Bay of Douarnenez, some swear they've glimpsed figures kneeling on the water, combing their hair with silver shells as if preparing for another soul to join their ranks. What lingers most isn't the horror of these tales, but their poignancy. The Morgans don't haunt Brittany's waters out of cruelty, they linger out of longing. They're the embodiment of every unanswered knock on a storm-lashed door, every empty chair at a family table. In a region where the sea gives and takes with equal indifference, the Morgans are the voice of that tension, a reminder that beneath the waves, the past is never truly gone. Listen closely next time you walk a Breton shore at twilight. That sigh in the wind, it might just be a Morgan still singing her elegy to the drowned. Before gods or men, before order or reason, there were creatures born from the fury of the waves, none more terrifying than the Fomorians of Irish myth and the Leviathan of ancient scripture. Though separated by culture and geography, these primordial sea monsters share a chilling kinship, embodying humanity's oldest fear, that beneath civilization's thin veneer, chaos still reigns. The Fomorians emerge from Ireland's darkest legends as misshapen giants, their bodies twisted by the sea's cruelty, one eye glaring, limbs like gnarled driftwood, skin the color of storm-churned foam. They weren't mere monsters, they were cosmic forces. When the first settlers, the Partholons, arrived in Ireland, the Fomorians slithered from the depths to wage war, their very presence poisoning the land with blight and fog. Later, they'd clash with the Tuatha De Danann, the godlike tribes of Irish myth, in a battle that split the sky. What's striking is how the Fomorians defy simple villainy. They're not invaders, they're inevitable. Their king, Balor, could kill with a glance from his single venomous eye, a metaphor for the sea's capricious lethality. To face them was to face nature's indifference, the understanding that no matter how deeply you plow the earth, the ocean can reclaim it in an instant. Now cross centuries and continents to the Leviathan, the biblical beast whose name means coiled one. Described in Job as a creature no hook can tame, its scales like rows of shields, its breath boiling the deep, the Leviathan isn't just an animal, it's divine wrath given form. Ancient Near Eastern cultures feared it as the embodiment of primordial chaos, a relic from the time before Yahweh tamed the waters. Psalm 74 even depicts God crushing its heads to establish order, a motif echoing Babylonian myths where Marduk slays the sea dragon Tiamat. But here's the haunting parallel. Like the Fomorians, the Leviathan isn't fully defeated. In Jewish folklore, it survives, lurking at the world's end, waiting to feast on the righteous at the final reckoning. Both creatures represent chaos subdued but never erased, a reminder that the sea's rage is older than creation itself. Dive deeper and the connections multiply. The Fomorian stronghold, Tory Island, was said to lie beyond the ninth wave, a Celtic metaphor for the edge of sanity. The Leviathan, too, dwells in the outer darkness, a realm beyond human reckoning. Both are tied to tyranny. Balor enslaves the sun, while the Leviathan's thrashing churns the sea into a slave's churn. And both defy human weaponry. Swords shatter against their hides, just as nets snap against the tides. What unites them isn't just their form, but their function. These myths aren't about monsters, they're about memory. The Fomorians personify Ireland's ancestral trauma of invasion and famine, the terror of a people whose land is perpetually besieged by storms and Vikings alike. The Leviathan channels the existential dread of desert tribes for whom the sea was an alien abyss, a realm of unknowable hunger. Their cultural wounds dressed in scales, stories that say, no matter how high you build your walls, the chaos beneath will always be listening. Today, their legacy lingers. Scientists studying extremophiles life forms thriving in crushing depths joke about real Fomorians near hydrothermal vents. The Leviathan's name graces everything from fossilized prehistoric whales to theoretical black holes. These creatures endure because they speak to a truth deeper than myth. That order is fragile, and the sea, with all its mysteries, remains the last dominion where humanity's rules don't apply. The next time you stand on a shore watching the horizon darken, remember, some legends aren't just stories, they're warnings whispered across millennia that the oldest things in the water aren't done with us yet. In the swirling currents of New Zealand's rivers and the cobalt depths of its coastal waters, the Taniwha wait beings as old as the land itself, neither holy monster nor mere myth. To the Maori, these creatures are as real as the tides, woven into the spiritual and physical landscape as protectors, omens, or sometimes terrifying forces of retribution. Unlike the one-dimensional sea beasts of European lore, Taniwha defy simple categorization. Some are described as sleek, serpentine kaishiaki, or guardians, who guide canoes to safety and warn of approaching storms. Others take the form of monstrous sharks or colossal lizards, their very presence a reminder of nature's untamable power. But what makes the Taniwha truly fascinating isn't just their diversity, it's how they embody the Maori worldview, where the natural and supernatural are inseparable. Take the legendary Taniwha of the Waikato River, Horotiu. Said to dwell near the rapids, this creature wasn't feared but revered, its movements believed to shape the river's flow. Fishermen would offer the first catch of the day to appease it, a practice echoing the Maori concept of reciprocity with the natural world. Contrast this with the tale of Panerera, a vengeful Taniwha from the Bay of Plenty, who drowned travelers as punishment for disrespecting tapu or sacred restrictions. These opposing roles reveal a deeper truth. Taniwha aren't arbitrary forces. They enforce balance, rewarding respect and punishing arrogance, much like the ecosystems they inhabit. The habitats of Taniwha are as varied as their forms. Some lurk in whirlpools like the terrifying Kaiwere at Huka Falls, where the water's violent churn is attributed to its thrashing tail. Others, like the whale-like Tuharangi, are said to patrol the open ocean, guiding lost waka canoes to shore. Even modern dredging projects have been altered to avoid disturbing Taniwha dwellings, a testament to their enduring cultural weight. In 2002, construction of a highway near Auckland was rerouted after local Iwi tribes identified the site as the home of a protective Taniwha, a decision that sparked debate but underscored the vitality of these beliefs. Today, the Taniwha's legacy thrives beyond folklore. They appear on rugby jerseys as symbols of strength, in contemporary art as metaphors for environmental guardianship, and even in legal battles over land and water rights. Scientists studying New Zealand's marine life note how Taniwha stories often align with the behaviors of real animals, like the migratory paths of giant eels or the territorial nature of bull sharks. But to reduce them to mere metaphor misses the point. For the Maori, Taniwha are living history, a bridge between ancestors and the present, their stories a map of both land and identity. Stand on the black sand beaches of the North Island at dusk, and you might feel it, the whisper of something older than memory watching from the waves. The Taniwha endure because they're more than myth. They're the voice of the water itself, reminding us that to know a place isn't just to chart its shores, but to listen to its stories. And in those stories, the land remembers. Along the misty riverbanks of Eastern Europe, where willow branches trail like skeletal fingers in the water, the Rusalka lingers, a spirit torn between sorrow and menace. Slavic folklore paints her as a drowned woman, her death often tied to betrayal or tragedy, her soul bound eternally to the waters that claimed her. By daylight, she might appear as a pale, luminous figure with hair like tangled riverweed, but come nightfall, her laughter twists into something sharper, her dance along the shore a siren call to the unwary. Unlike Western mermaids who lure with beauty alone, the Rusalka embodies something far more complex, a fusion of grief, vengeance, and the untamed cycles of nature. Her origins are steeped in duality. Some tales say she's the spirit of a woman who died violently, suicides, jilted brides, or victims of drowning curses. Other stories link her to the Navki, souls of unbaptized children condemned to wander, but the most haunting versions tie her to ancient fertility rites. In pre-Christian Slavic traditions, Rusalki were honored during Rusalnaya week, a spring festival where villagers wove flower garlands and left them floating on rivers to appease the spirits. This wasn't mere superstition, it was a pact. The Rusalka's wrath could blight crops or drown livestock, but her favor promised abundant harvests and rain. The line between monster and deity blurred with the seasons. Watch for her dance, that's when she's most dangerous. Folklore describes Rusalki gathering under the moon, their movements hypnotic, their bare feet leaving no prints on the damp earth. To join them meant death, their embrace dragging men into the depths where the water fills your lungs like liquid silver. Yet there's a tragic undercurrent. In some ballads, a Rusalka recognizes her former lover among the villagers, her rage dissolving into despair as she realizes she can no longer touch the living without destroying them. This emotional depth sets her apart. She's not a mindless predator but a prisoner of her own anguish. Modern echoes of these tales persist in unexpected ways. In Ukrainian villages, some still tie red ribbons to trees near water, a ward against rusalki, echoing older rituals where red symbolized both lifeblood and protection. Scholars even note parallels between rusalki myths and ecological patterns. Their supposed rampages often coincided with spring floods when swollen rivers devoured fields. The myths then served as both explanation and warning: respect the water's power or become part of its lament. So the next time you hear a ripple where no fish broke the surface, or spot a tangle of pale reeds that looks unnervingly like hair, remember, the rusalka isn't just a ghost story. She's a testament to the Slavic understanding of nature's duality, life-giving and lethal, beautiful and brutal, her song a reminder that some sorrows never fade, they just learn to dance. Deep in the chocolate-brown waters of the Amazon River, where sunlight filters through the canopy in dappled gold, something extraordinary breaches the surface, not just a dolphin but an encantado, a shapeshifter as ancient as the rainforest itself. These aren't your ordinary freshwater dolphins with their pink bellies and playful clicks. In Brazilian folklore, the encantado are sorcerers of the river, capable of slipping from dolphin form into human guise, their transformations marked by the faintest splash and the lingering scent of wet earth. By day, they might swim as Boto cor de Rosa, the iconic pink river dolphins. By night, they emerge as handsome strangers in crisp white suits, their hats tilted just so to hide the blowholes that betray their true nature. But what makes these beings so captivating isn't just their magic, it's how they embody the Amazon's own duality: enchanting and dangerous, seductive and vengeful. The tales are as murky as the river itself. In one common story, an encantado appears at a village festa, his charm irresistible, his dance steps flawless. He courts a young woman with whispered promises of underwater palaces where the walls shimmer with fish scales. If she follows him to the riverbank, she'll vanish, either drowned or transformed, depending on who's telling it. But here's the twist: some legends claim these unions aren't always tragedies. Children born from such pairings are said to inherit supernatural gifts, like the ability to breathe underwater or understand the language of animals. It's a narrative that mirrors the Amazon's own paradox, a place of both peril and profound generosity. What's striking is how these myths intertwine with real ecology. The Boto's pink hue, caused by capillaries near the skin's surface, takes on mythical significance. Local lore says they blush from dancing too much in human form. Their elongated snouts, perfect for rooting through riverbed debris, become noses that sniff out secrets. Even their solitary nature feeds the legends. Unlike ocean dolphins, Botos rarely travel in pods, lending them an air of mystery. Scientists studying the species note how these stories might have served practical purposes. By casting the Boto as enchanted, indigenous and ribeirinho riverside communities discouraged hunting of a sacred animal, ensuring the dolphin's role as ecosystem engineers spreading seeds, controlling fish populations remained intact. Modern threats have only deepened the encantado's symbolism. With the Amazon under siege from deforestation and pollution, the Boto has become a conservation icon. Activists invoke the old tales to rally protection, framing the dolphin's decline as the unraveling of magic itself. In Manaus, murals depict encantados weeping blood-red tears, a stark metaphor for mercury poisoning from illegal gold mining. Some shamans even claim the spirits are growing restless, their once playful tricks turning violent. Fishermen speak of encantado curses, boats capsized by unseen forces, nets slashed as if by invisible teeth. Whether superstition or ecological warning, the message is clear. The river's guardians are losing patience, yet the encantado's greatest power might be their ability to adapt. In bustling cities like Belém, new legends emerge of dolphin men in nightclubs, their music so hypnotic it lures patrons into the nearby river. Tour operators offer encantado safaris, promising glimpses of the pink Bajau at sunset when the light turns the water to liquid copper. Even scientists play along, tagging dolphins with names like Dom Juan or Feiticeiro Sorcerer. The line between myth and marketing blurs, but the core truth remains: the encantado are more than folklore. They're a living bridge between the Amazon's past and its precarious future, a reminder that some rivers don't just flow with water but with stories, and those stories might just be the key to saving them. So the next time you see a ripple in the Amazon's dark waters, ask yourself, was that just a dolphin surfacing or something older, wiser, watching you back? In a rainforest where every leaf hums with life, perhaps the encantado are still there, dancing between worlds, waiting to see if we'll listen before the music fades for good. Japan's coastal folklore harbors creatures that don't just frighten, they prophesy. Among the waves, two legends stand in stark contrast: the Ningyo, a twisted mockery of mermaids, and the Bake Kujera, a spectral whale whose bones glow like moonlight on water. One is a grotesque messenger of disaster, the other a ghostly monument to human greed. Together, they form a chilling dialogue between myth and morality, warning of nature's delicate balance and the consequences of ignoring its whispers. First, the Ningyo. Forget the delicate sirens of Western tales. This creature is something far more unsettling. Described in ancient texts as a fish with a human face, its mouth bristles with needle-like teeth, and its voice sounds like a crying child. Fishermen who accidentally caught one faced a terrible dilemma: release it and risk summoning storms, keep it and invite calamity. One famous account from the Edo period tells of a village that cooked a Ningyo, only to be swallowed by a tsunami days later. Unlike mermaids who enchant, the Ningyo exists solely as an omen, its very presence a scream of impending doom. But here's the eerie part: some scholars believe these legends might trace back to real encounters with deformed marine life. Radioactive runoff, mercury poisoning centuries before modern science documented pollution's effects. The Ningyo myth may have been Japan's way of encoding ecological trauma. A fish with a human face isn't just a monster, it's a mirror. Now meet the Bake Kujera, the ghost whale. Unlike the fleshy horror of the Ningyo, this entity is pure bone, a skeletal leviathan that glides through fog without flesh or blood, trailed by eerie birds and phantom fishermen. First recorded in the 19th century, sightings often coincided with whaling seasons. Villagers that relied on whaling would spot the specter offshore, its ribs creaking like ship timbers before mysterious fires erupted or fishing yields collapsed. The Bake Kujera isn't merely a ghost story, it's a haunting metaphor for overharvesting. Whaling was once so pivotal to Japanese coastal economies that some towns had shrines dedicated to slain whales, their spirits appeased with prayers. The Bake Kujera embodies the guilt of that industry, the unquiet soul of species pushed to the brink. What unites these legends is their prophetic power. The Ningyo and Bake Kujera don't just punish, they teach. In Shimane Prefecture, pottery fragments depict Ningyo alongside drowned villagers, suggesting these tales were oral survival guides. Ignore the signs and the sea will claim you. Similarly, the Bake Kujera's appearances often preceded real ecological collapse, like the decline of whale populations in the 1800s. Today, their warnings feel unnervingly prescient. When Fukushima's waters leaked radiation in 2011, fishermen reported deformed fish Ningyo-like mutations that reignited ancient fears, and as whale strandings increase globally, some whisper of skeletal shadows trailing the pods. The lesson here isn't just about monsters, it's about accountability. The Ningyo and Bake Kujera aren't arbitrary horrors, they're manifestations of consequences. One represents the sea's retaliation for violation, pollution, greed, arrogance. the other symbolizes the weight of collective guilt, the unfinished business of exploitation. In a nation surrounded by water, where the ocean is both lifeline and reaper, these stories endure because they're not fantasy. They're cultural memory written in salt and bone, urging us to listen before the waves rise to speak again. In the primordial dark before time, when the world was nothing but roiling waters and hungry void, the Aztecs believed a monster lurked beneath the waves, Cipactli, the first being, a creature so ravenous it devoured everything it touched. Imagine a grotesque fusion of crocodile and fish, its body studded with gnashing mouths at every joint, its very existence an embodiment of chaos. This wasn't just some mythical beast, it was the foundation of creation itself. According to the Codex Vaticanus, the gods Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca had to tear Cipactli apart to forge the earth, her body becoming the land, her blood the oceans. Yet even in death, her hunger persisted. The Aztecs believed earthquakes were Cipactli's restless twitching beneath the soil, her jaws still snapping for the world she once ruled. But why a crocodile-fish hybrid? The answer lies in Mesoamerica's tangled relationship with water. The Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, was a city of canals and causeways, built on a lake where real-life crocodiles basked on muddy banks. Trade routes stretched along coastal waters teeming with sharks and rays, creatures that, like Cipactli, blurred the line between predator and landscape. Some scholars argue her many mouths symbolize the voraciousness of floods or the unpredictable tides that could swallow entire harvests. Others see her as a metaphor for the dangers of long-distance sea trade, where merchants faced storms and pirates as ravenous as the monster herself. Cipactli's legacy isn't confined to dusty codices. Modern divers exploring cenotes, the sacred sinkholes of the Yucatan, report eerie sensations of being watched from the murk, as if something primordial still lingers. Fishermen near Veracruz whisper of El pez diabolico, a rare deep-sea fish with jagged teeth that surfaces during hurricanes, echoing Cipactli's role as a harbinger of destruction. Even Mexico City's frequent subsidence, as it sinks back into the lakebed, feels like Cipactli's revenge, the land slowly returning to the monster's maw. What's most haunting is how the myth endures in subtle ways. During Dia de los Muertos, some still leave offerings by waterways to quiet the old hunger. And when earthquakes rattle the highlands, older generations murmur, Cipactli está inquieta, she's restless again. The monster may have been dismembered, but her spirit lingers, a reminder that creation and destruction are two sides of the same coin. The Aztecs understood what we often forget. The world isn't built on solid ground, but on the bones of something far older and far hungrier. And sometimes, if you listen closely, you can still hear her growling beneath your feet. Picture a moonlit loch in the Scottish Highlands, its surface smooth as black glass until a lone horse emerges from the shallows, its coat gleaming like wet obsidian, its mane dripping with algae. It seems docile, almost welcoming, but one touch seals your fate. This is the kelpie, a shape-shifting spirit of the lochs and rivers, and its Icelandic cousin, the nyka, is no less deadly. These water horses don't just drown their victims, they ensnare them with deceit, embodying the treachery of untamed waters across two cultures separated by sea yet united by shared dread. The kelpie's modus operandi is as chilling as it is consistent. Appearing as a stunning black or white steed, it lures travelers onto its back, its hide suddenly turning adhesive as soon as they mount. Once bonded to its victim's skin, the kelpie gallops into the depths, its rider unable to let go as the water closes overhead. Some versions of the tale claim the kelpie's spine elongates to accommodate endless passengers, a grim metaphor for mass drownings in Scotland's capricious lochs. The creature's true form, when revealed, is a grotesque hybrid. Equine body fused with slimy, scaled flesh, its teeth jagged like broken river rocks. Yet what makes the kelpie uniquely terrifying isn't its appearance, but its intelligence. It doesn't just kill, it chooses. Folktales describe it mimicking human cries for help or taking the shape of a lost loved one to draw victims closer. Cross the North Sea to Iceland's volcanic lakes, and the Nyka follows a similar script with a twist. Unlike the kelpie's sleek allure, the Nyka often appears as a drab, shaggy pony, its hooves backward to confuse trackers. Its call sounds like a melancholic violin, a siren song for the unwary. But here's where the myths diverge. While the kelpie's grip is inescapable, the Nyka's power breaks if you utter its true name aloud. This detail hints at a deeper cultural difference. In Scotland, where clans fiercely guarded their oral traditions, naming had power. But in Iceland, where Norse rune magic prevailed, words created reality. The Nyka's weakness reflects the Icelandic belief that language could tame even the wildest forces. Both creatures crystallize their homeland's dangers. Scotland's locks, forged by glaciers, are mercurial calm one moment, lethal the next. The kelpie personifies this unpredictability, its beauty masking imminent doom. Iceland's Nyka, meanwhile, embodies the island's geothermal hazards. Its backward hooves mirror the disorienting steam vents that swallow unwary travelers, while its violin-like cry evokes the eerie sounds of shifting ice. These aren't just monsters, they're mnemonic devices teaching generations to respect nature's illusions. Modern sightings persist, though explanations vary. Biologists suggest misidentified seals or stag antlers protruding from water might have fueled kelpie lore. In Iceland, the Nyka's violin cry finds parallels in the vocalizations of courting loons. Yet science doesn't dim the legend's power. When fog curls over Loch Ness or steam rises from Iceland's Blue Lagoon, you'll still find locals hesitating, not out of fear but remembrance. These stories endure because they're more than warnings. They're conversations with landscapes that refuse to be domesticated. The kelpie and Nyka don't just drown their victims, they dissolve the arrogance of human dominance. To encounter one is to face the water's oldest truth. Some forces aren't meant to be ridden, only respected. Next time you stand by a lonely shore and see hoofprints trailing into the waves, ask yourself, are they leading you home or into the kelpie's embrace? The water won't answer, it never does. For centuries, sailors' charts held secret islands that shimmered on maps like mirages, only to vanish when sought. Among these phantom lands, few taunted explorers like High Brassel, a mist-shrouded circle of gold said to rise from the Atlantic west of Ireland every 7 years. Medieval texts describe its streets paved with gemstones, its inhabitants ageless, ruled by a priest-king who held the secrets of the universe. Portuguese expeditions scoured the waves for it as early as the 1400s, and as late as 1872, a Captain Johnson claimed to have anchored there, walking its shores before a sudden fog swallowed the island whole. Then there's Thule, first mentioned by the Greek explorer Pytheas in the 4th century BCE, a land of midnight sun and frozen seas, so far north that water stiffened into slush. Roman fleets hunted for it, convinced it hid untapped riches, while Nazis later warped its legend into a mythic Aryan homeland. But what makes these phantom islands so haunting isn't just their elusiveness, it's how they mirror the very real dangers and dreams of seafaring itself. High Brassel's origins might lie in optical illusions unique to the North Atlantic. Under certain conditions, temperature inversions bend light, creating superior mirages that lift distant coastlines above the horizon. The Faroe Islands, when distorted this way, could appear as a ringed landmass fitting High Brassel's classic description. As for Thule, scholars debate whether Pytheas glimpsed Iceland, Norway, or even the Shetlands through sea ice, his measurements skewed by primitive tools. Yet navigational errors alone don't explain their staying power. These islands became canvases for human yearning, High Brassel as a Celtic Eden, Thule as the edge of knowable worlds. Even failed voyages fed the myths. When Spanish sailors searching for the Island of the Seven Cities, another phantom instead stumbled upon the Azores, They swore its volcanic peaks matched the Lost Kingdom's towers just sunken by time. The cruelest twist, some phantom islands lingered on maps long after their debunking. Sandy Island, a speck northeast of Australia, appeared on British charts until 2012 when a scientific team sailed through its coordinates and found only open ocean. Turns out a whaler's 18th century typo, a misplaced decimal point, had birthed a cartographic ghost. Similarly, the infamous Bajau near Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula vanished from modern satellite imagery, sparking conspiracy theories about CIA erasures to manipulate oil rights. Such blunders reveal a deeper truth: the ocean resists mastery. Ancient mariners lacked GPS, but even today's technology can't tame its trickery. Shoals shift, reefs erode, and sometimes the sea simply swallows its own secrets. Yet Phantom Islands aren't just cautionary tales, they're testaments to imagination's power. The fictional St. Brendan's Isle, said to drift near the Canaries, inspired real voyages that expanded Europe's horizons. Thule myth pushed explorers farther north, mapping territories once deemed uninhabitable. In a way, these legends were prototypes for space exploration: Mars as the new High Brasil, exoplanets as modern Thules. The human mind needs frontiers, even illusory ones, to leap beyond the known. So as we close these 30 legends, remember, the ocean's greatest magic isn't in the monsters it hides or the cities it drowns. It's in the stories we spin to navigate its vastness. Phantom Islands teach us that every map has edges, every voyage risks deception, and sometimes the most extraordinary discoveries begin with a mirage. The sea doesn't offer truths, it offers possibilities, and perhaps in the end, that's the most enduring mystery of all. Between myth and history lies one of the greatest unsolved riddles of the ancient world: the sea peoples. Unlike the fantastical creatures and phantom islands we've explored, these were real warriors who left behind shattered cities and traumatized civilizations in their wake. Around 1200 years before the Common Era, at the twilight of the Bronze Age, a storm of chaos swept across the Mediterranean. Empires that had stood for centuries, the Hittites, the Mycenaeans, even mighty Egypt, were rocked by invasions so devastating that survivors wrote of lands uprooted and scattered in battle. The culprits, Pharaoh Ramesses III, called them simply the peoples of the sea, a vague label that's tantalized historians ever since. Who were they, really? The few clues we have come from fragmented inscriptions and reliefs etched by their victims. Egyptian temple walls at Medinet Habu depict them as a confederation of warriors wearing horned helmets and feathered headdresses, sailing in sleek ships with bird-headed prows. Their weaponry was eclectic. Some wielded long swords akin to those found in the Aegean. Others carried round shields like Central European tribes. This cultural patchwork suggests they weren't a single nation, but a coalition of displaced peoples, refugees, and raiders united by desperation or opportunity. Theories about their origins range from Sardinia to Sicily, Anatolia to the Levant, but one thing's certain: wherever they came from, they came like a force of nature. The scale of destruction is staggering. In Anatolia, the Hittite capital of Hattusa burned so thoroughly that its clay tablets baked into permanence, preserving desperate pleas for aid. Along the Syrian coast, the wealthy port city of Ugarit sent frantic letters, one found still in its kiln, never fired, begging for reinforcements that never arrived. Even Egypt, though it repelled their attacks at the Nile Delta, emerged weakened, its economy crippled by the cost of war. This wasn't just conquest, it was a systemic unraveling. The Bronze Age's intricate trade networks collapsed like a house of cards, plunging the Mediterranean into a dark age that lasted centuries. But here's where history blurs into legend. The Sea Peoples left no records of their own, no sagas, no king lists, only the terrified accounts of those they ravaged. This vacuum has bred speculation as turbulent as the seas they crossed. Some scholars argue they weren't invaders at all, but climate refugees fleeing droughts that tree rings confirm racked the region. Others see them as maritime mercenaries, their violence amplified by the chaos of the times. Then there's the fringe theories that they were survivors of Atlantis or seafaring survivors of the volcanic eruption that gutted Thera. Modern pop culture paints them as proto-Vikings, a narrative that owes more to romanticism than evidence. What makes the Sea Peoples truly mythic isn't their deeds, but their ambiguity. Like the mist-shrouded islands we've explored, they resist mapping. Every burned city, every shattered tablet is a breadcrumb leading us deeper into the labyrinth. Perhaps that's why they captivate us. They're the perfect historical Rorschach test, reflecting back whatever we project onto them. Conquerors, refugees. Harbingers of apocalypse, the sea, as always, keeps its secrets. All we know is that when their ships finally vanished from history's horizon, the world they left behind was forever changed. And in that change, echoes of their mystery still ripple through time. Ancient sea legends never truly vanish. They ripple through time, resurfacing in blockbuster films, best-selling novels, and even modern conservation movements. Take Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, where Davy Jones and his ghostly crew are direct descendants of maritime folklore. With his face of writhing tentacles and a heart locked away in a chest, Jones embodies centuries of sailors' dread, the Dutchman's curse mixed with Kraken-sized terror. But Hollywood didn't invent these tropes, it repackaged them. The film's Flying Dutchman, eternally crewed by the damned, borrows from 17th century Dutch myths, while the Maelstrom battle channels Norse legends of ships swallowed by whirlpools. Even Jack Sparrow's compass, pointing to what the holder desires most, echoes Viking tales of magical wayfinders. These stories endure because they tap into universal fears of being lost, trapped, or consumed by the sea's whims. Superhero sagas like Aquaman offer another twist. The film's sunken kingdom of Atlantis isn't Plato's doomed utopia but a high-tech empire. Its trident-wielding rulers blending Poseidon's grandeur with Polynesian voyaging traditions. Arthur Curry's ability to commune with marine life mirrors Bajau legends of dolphin whisperers, while the trench-dwelling creatures he battles recall Lovecraft's deep ones themselves, inspired by Maori Taniwa lore. What's striking is how these modern myths flip the script. Ancient sailors saw the ocean as a realm of monsters. Aquaman frames it as a wounded kingdom needing protection. This shift isn't accidental. As climate change bleaches coral reefs and plastics choke the tides, pop culture reimagines sea deities as eco-warriors. Beyond entertainment, these legends fuel real-world activism. Conservation groups harness the emotional pull of mermaids and krakens to spotlight ocean crises. In the Philippines, the Save the Dugong campaign rebranded the critically endangered sea cow as a real-life sea maiden, linking it to local selkie tales to galvanize protection. Meanwhile, Icelandic researchers studying melting glaciers invoke the Nika's legend, warning that disturbing ancient waters risks awakening unforeseen consequences, a poetic nod to permafrost microbes and rising seas. Even the Great Pacific Garbage Patch gets mythic treatment. Artists sculpt floating Kraken tentacles from recovered plastics, turning pollution into public art with the visceral impact of an old sailor's warning. The deepest connection lies in storytelling itself. Just as ancestors used myths to explain storms or guide navigation, modern scientists frame data through narrative. Marine biologists tracing shark migrations speak of ocean highways like Celtic tales of salmon wisdom paths. Climate models predicting sea level rise echo flood myths from Atlantis to the Epic of Gilgamesh, not as prophecies but as patterns. The ocean's rhythms haven't changed, only our language has. When a surfer today calls a wave Leviathan, or a diver describes a shipwreck as Siren Croyne's lair, they're part of an unbroken chain. The stories evolve, but their power remains to terrify, to teach, and above all, to remind us that the sea's mysteries don't belong to the past. They're writing the next chapter right now, in the flicker of bioluminescent algae and the silent creep of the tide. From the shape-shifting enchantment of the Encantado to the bone-chilling fury of the Nucalavi, the legends we've explored today reveal something profound. Across oceans and centuries, humanity has woven the sea's mysteries into stories as varied as the waves themselves. Yet for all their differences, these myths share a common heartbeat. The ocean isn't just water. It's a living, breathing character in our collective imagination. Sometimes a provider, sometimes a destroyer, but always an enigma daring us to look deeper. Consider the patterns that emerge. Virtually every coastal culture has its version of the monster from the deep, whether it's Scotland's kelpie or Japan's yumabazu. These creatures aren't just random horrors, they're metaphors for the sea's unpredictability, teaching lessons about respect and humility. Similarly, tales of lost civilizations like Atlantis or High Brassel speak to a universal longing for hidden knowledge, a belief that the waters hold secrets too grand for mortal minds. Even the duality of beings like the Rusalka or Meros, both tragic and terrifying, mirrors our own complex relationship with the ocean, reliant on its bounty yet wary of its wrath. What's equally fascinating is how these stories adapt. The same waters that inspired Viking sagas of Jörmungandr also birthed the Bajau's whispered legends of coral kingdoms. The Caribbean's Lusca and the Amazon's Yakuruna might hail from opposite sides of the globe, but both embody the eerie beauty of uncharted depths. This isn't coincidence, it's proof that the sea speaks a universal language, one of wonder and warning. Perhaps that's why these myths endure. In an age of satellites and submersibles, we've mapped every inch of the ocean's surface, yet less than 20% of its floor has been explored. The deep remains our planet's last great frontier, and as long as shadows shift beneath the waves, we'll keep telling stories to fill the unknown. The Kraken evolves into a blockbuster villain, the Taniwha becomes a guardian of marine sanctuaries. Our myths grow with us, reflecting new fears and hopes. So here's where I turn to you. Which of these legends resonated most? Maybe you've heard local tales passed down in your own community, of mermaids in Caribbean coves or ghost ships off rugged coastlines. Drop your favorites in the comments. Let's build a living tapestry of sea lore as vast as the ocean itself. Because the next time you stand at the water's edge, remember, every ripple holds a story and every shadow beneath the surface. Well, that's where the next legend begins. If these ancient sea legends left you as captivated as a sailor hearing mermaid's song, don't let the journey end here. Drop a like if you'd brave the Kraken's depths for more myths, and subscribe to keep your compass pointed toward hidden tales. Your clicks aren't just anchors for the channel, they're the wind in our sails, guiding us to the next mystery. Got a myth that chills your spine or a legend that haunts your local waters? Shout it in the comments below. We're always scouting for fresh lore to chart. Until next time, may your curiosity stay as boundless as the deep, and your adventures as thrilling as a ghost ship's wake. Fair winds and following seas, explorers, water